Pedro de Alvarado. Born in 1485, little is known about Pedro de Alvarado prior to his arrival in the Americas, where his presence would affect the lives of millions, his lust for gold and cruelty towards the native people becoming legendary. Shortly after setting foot on the shores of the New World, he became friends with the famous Hernan Cortés and would go on to act as his right-hand man. He soon joined Cortés in the conquest of Cuba, where he obtained land and riches that might have satisfied an ordinary man, but Alvarado was anything but ordinary. With rumors of a vast empire rich in gold located somewhere in Mexico, Alvarado joined a scouting expedition which explored the Yucatan Peninsula, where contact with the local Mayan people confirmed the existence of the wealthy and powerful Aztec Empire to the west. Upon returning with confirmation of the existence of the gold-rich Aztecs, excitement spread throughout the Spanish colonies. Hernan Cortés was dispatched with a fleet of 11 ships and 500 men, with orders to conquer in the name of the King of Spain. Dissatisfied with a life that would have seemed luxurious to many people, Pedro de Alvarado wasted no time in signing up with this new expedition and was given command of the ship by Cortés, who was well aware of the man's formidable military skills, as well as his tendency for brutality, yet this decision nearly doomed the entire expedition. While attending a meeting with the Aztec king in his capital, relations between the Spanish and Aztecs began to unravel, and in an act of desperation, Cortés took the king hostage, hoping that holding him prisoner might ensure the safety of the vastly outnumbered Spanish. It was during this period that Cortés had to temporarily leave the city to fend off a group of rival conquistadors, leaving Alvarado in charge in the Aztec capital with strict orders to keep the king in Spanish custody while ensuring his safety. The details of what happened next vary depending on the source, but what is known is that shortly after the departure of Cortés, Pedro de Alvarado massacred a large number of Aztec nobles and priests while they were conducting a religious festival, an act which enraged the Aztec people, causing them to lay siege to the Spanish enclave in the city. According to Spanish sources, Alvarado gave permission for the festival to take place so long as no human sacrifice was involved. However, in the hours leading up to the festival, he became suspicious that they were planning to carry out a sacrifice, regardless of his warning, and so he tortured and interrogated one of the priests, where he discovered that a full-scale revolt against the Spanish presence was also being planned. As the festival began, he ordered his men to surround the area where the festival was being held, and attacked without warning, killing several thousand unarmed nobles, warriors, and priests. According to the Aztecs, it was Alvarado's lust for gold that sparked the massacre. Alvarado was initially a peaceful observer at the festival. However, upon seeing how richly decorated in gold the people attending were, his greed took over, causing him and his men to rush in and slaughter anyone they came across, looting the gold from their butchered corpses. Which version of events is true remains disputed. However, what is known is that the massacre was the last straw for the Aztecs, provoking a widespread revolt. The hostage king was ordered to intervene to try and calm the situation, but was stoned to death by his own people, who were now baying for Spanish blood. However, the Aztecs claim that the king was murdered by the Spanish as part of their treachery. Had Alvarado's greed cost the life of the Aztec king, led to the murder of thousands, and nearly ruined the entire expedition, or was he attempting to squash a rebellion? Either way, the Spanish were forced to fight a humiliating and bloody retreat out of the city, losing over 2/3 of their men before finally reaching safety. Yet this would not be Alvarado's last visit to the Aztec capital, and he returned with Cortés, commanding his own force during the Spanish siege of the city. The siege was unbelievably savage, but it seemed as though Alvarado was in his element, burning Aztec shrines and slaughtering soldiers and civilians alike, as the Spanish and their native allies fought to capture the city. It's likely that the sheer brutality of the siege permanently affected all those who took part, and during one skirmish, 5 of Alvarado's men were captured and taken to the Great Temple, where they were sacrificed, the bloody ritual fully visible to Alvarado and his surviving men, who watched on in horror as their men had their hearts cut from their chest before being beheaded. After the grisly sacrifice was complete, the dead men's decapitated heads were thrown into Alvarado's camp, an event that no doubt increased their already immense hatred for the Aztecs. The eventual capture of the capital led to the downfall of the ancient Aztec civilization. However, Alvarado's thirst for blood and gold had yet to be quenched. He was later sent to invade Guatemala and conquer the Mayan people who inhabited the area, where his brutal treatment of the natives was counterproductive to his mission, only causing them to resist the Spanish with more ferocity as he slaughtered and burnt his way through their lands, enslaving huge numbers of people and putting them to work in gold mines in his never-ending quest for personal enrichment. With each city he took, thousands died in the subsequent battles and revenge killings, and according to one Spanish priest, Alvarado was personally responsible for the deaths of 4 to 5 million natives in Guatemala alone between 1524 and 1540. His greed and brutality seemed to know no limits, and he soon even turned on his native allies, demanding gold tributes from them and declaring war on those who refused to pay or simply could not pay. During yet another expedition, this time into El Salvador, Alvarado was badly wounded and forced to retreat back to Honduras, where he had been named governor. However, like many of the conquistadors, Alvarado would not die a peaceful death. Despite his wounds, he continued to dream of conquest and plunder, yet while planning another one of his expeditions, he became embroiled in putting down a rebellion in Mexico, where he finally met his end, not at the point of an enemy spear, but by being crushed to death in a freak accident after a horse became frightened and ran amok. Despite the great wealth and power he had obtained during his life, Alvarado's achievements never seemed to be enough to satisfy him, with exploration, war, and further conquests forever at the front of his mind. The cruel and brutal man's name eternally associated with the slaughter and subjugation of millions of people.